Obamacare doesn't fully kick in until 2014. But companies are already getting squeezed by the new law. Darden restaurants, you know them, Red Lobster, Smoky Bones, Olive Garden. They own 2,000 restaurants across the country and employ 180,000 people. They're testing out ways to get around Obamacare's new regulations. They're limiting the workers' hours to part-time instead of full-time. Why? Because under the new health care law, employers are mandated to provide insurance to full-time employees, and they face steep fines if they don't comply. Just take a look at the new jobs figures. The number of part-time workers was up by 500,000 last month alone. We now have over 8 million people classified as part-time employees that can't find full-time jobs. Now, I'm sure the president and the progressives will spin it as at least jobs are being created, but it's not. It's a growing trend because companies are preparing for the new Obamacare regulations and don't want to be forced to pay for employee health care. Hiring part-time makes business sense to them. And this is what the economy will look like under Obamacare. Now, Westgate Resorts CEO David Siegel sent an email to his 6,000 employees explaining the cutbacks he'll be forced to make if the president is reelected. It's simple. Businesses are worried about what's coming next. Now, well, this is what's coming next tomorrow. New regulations from the Dodd-Frank Wall Street bill kick in, clamping down on the over-the-counter derivatives. The problem is Wall Street has no idea what to expect because the government hasn't released all the new rules. Cue Bernanke to print even more money to prop up the stock market. This is exactly what happens when government intervenes in the private market. It's a regulation tsunami. Now, my next guest is someone who understands the economy. He's a former executive of a community bank, and now he's an elected official. South Carolina Congressman Jeff Duncan joins us from his home state. How you doing, Congressman?
I'm doing great, Andrew. Good to be with you today.
Now, here's the thing. When you look at the way businesses operate, a business operates on two pieces of paper, one that details costs, one that details revenue. If the cost side of the ledger outweighs the revenue side of the ledger, you're out of business. It's that simple. If the federal government is mandating additional costs that trump revenue, you've got two choices. You can either cut back, raise your prices, or I'm sorry, three choices, cut back, raise your prices, or go out of business. And that's not really a choice, so two choices.
That's right. That's right. I mean, going out of business is an alternative that a lot of businesses are facing. If you have 49 employees, do you hire that 50th employee, which means you roll up under the Obamacare, and you've either got to provide health insurance for them or pay what we now know as a tax under Obamacare, $2,000 per employee.
Well, the funny thing is when you look at these sort of artificial numeric borderlines, 50, 49, 48, 100 employees, you look at companies that got 6,000, 7,000, 10,000, 180,000 in the case of Darden. This is something that's being thrust upon them with very little time to make any changes. Had Darden known maybe 10 years ago this was going to happen, they might have broken up some of their restaurants into subset corporations. Who knows? But at this point, it's like throwing a huge monkey wrench into any big business. And what it does to small and medium-sized businesses is say, hey, you might not want to grow too big because this is what happens once you cross that Rubicon.
Absolutely. I mean, businesses are having to make decisions under a very uncertain environment. What is the employee cost going to be under Obamacare? What are our utility rates going to be if cap and trade comes back in? Are we going to be sued by the NLRB? What is our tax rate going to be? Because every time the president opens his mouth, he talks about raising taxes on someone. And so they're operating under a huge, really uncertain environment.
Well, one of the things I find funny about the president and his ideas for taxation, and I was citing a piece from the Hill newspaper the other day, when the president was looking at the price of gas, he said, well, my tax cuts for 98% of working Americans will offset that. Well, first of all, I thought a tax cut was supposed to go in your back pocket, not into your gas tank. But this little game of one hand up the bat, that every time the cost of a commodity or a necessity goes up, the government tries to give us a little bit more back in our paychecks. We're going to lose if we try to live with that because the government can't keep pace with it.
Absolutely. The government needs to get the heck out of the way and allow businesses to operate, create jobs, and do what they do. One thing the government can do is pursue American energy independence. If we want to lower the price at the pump for American consumers and also for the industry that's moving the goods and services around this country, then let's go after American energy independence, or let's go after North American energy independence with approving the Keystone Pipeline, opening up the Outer Continental Shelf, opening up federal lands where we have these resources. God bless this country with abundant resources. If we would just open those up, we could be independent in this country for our energy needs.
I'm still suffering a hangover from all 2,000 whatever number of pages from the Obamacare legislation. Does anybody really know what's in Dodd-Frank, or is it banks are going to figure it out as they violate provisions they didn't even know were in there?
Absolutely. I mean, Dodd-Frank's another burdensome regulation on the banking industry. And look, this economy isn't going to come back until banks can start lending money again, both to small businesses and large businesses. Under Dodd-Frank, there is so much uncertainty for banks. Look, my constituents, the folks that own small businesses, need to have access to capital in order to create jobs and grow their businesses. They do that by going to their local community banks that are operating under really the uncertain or the unknown future under Dodd-Frank, because we don't know what's there. Are we going to allow the regulators to be like Kathleen Sebelius and write new regulations every day for the financial industry? That creates tremendous amounts of uncertainty.